Hello. Today we're going to look at some samples of writing that describe the results of a graph. So before we look at some samples, let's take a look at the graph and understand what we need to do. Well, the first thing we need to do is pay attention to the title or the caption. Malaria mortality annual rate since 1900. So we're talking about the past 100 and some years, and we go down and we look 1900, 1930, 1950, 1970, 1990, 1997. So basically almost over 100 years. We also notice that there are 3 bars for each year. A red one that relates to the world minus sub-Saharan Africa, the whole world, and here relates specifically this tan color to sub-Saharan Africa. And we begin to look and say, okay, what is the overall trend? So if we look for the world besides sub-Saharan Africa, the red, we can see that over the 100 years, there was a lot of malaria, but now there practically isn't any. Actually, since about 1970, there isn't much. We also see that in general in the world, it's gone down a lot. But what we see in sub-Saharan Africa is that it's very different. Although there was lots of malaria in the whole world up until 1930, we see a very, very big difference. It's gone down in the rest of the world, but it's still a very big problem in sub-Saharan Africa. So now what we need to do is think about how we write. So let's take a look at some samples. Okay, the first thing I see is a problem because I click here and what do I see? It's going in the wrong direction. It's going right to left. It should be going left to right because it's English. So we have to change that. We click here and we put it here. You were also asked to write one paragraph, but what do we see here? We see a chunk of text here and a chunk of text here. We need to put it together and not just have a group of sentences. So here we see that we have now a paragraph. And let's look. What do we know? It has to start with the description of what it is. That's our topic sentence. We need an explanation of what there is. Let's put this in green. And then we need some kind of identification of what's the issue. What is it? What can we understand? The trend. And let's put this in blue. So here, the graph describes the malaria mortality rates since 1900 to 1997. In all the years, we see 3 groups, and we have all of it. And then we see at the end, but in the future years, we can see Africa, the number of patients get up during that all the world still be inclined. So even though there are many grammatical errors here, we can see that this is very clearly organized and identifies what we call the trend. That while everywhere else in the world is going down, in Africa it's going up. Let's take a look at another one and see if we can find its organization. What do we see here again? We see a group of sentences. I can't see a paragraph. And it's all going in the wrong direction. We want to make sure, let's take a look. It was all mixed up, so we click here. We put it all so it's going, as we said, from left to right. But then we see a group of sentences. We don't have a paragraph. Remember, in a paragraph, all of the sentences follow one another. We don't start with a new sentence on a new line. So let's put it together the way a paragraph should be, and then we can look at it. Already we see that it looks better. It's a paragraph now, and not a list of sentences. So let's read it together. In the graph that describes the mortality data for malaria disease between 1900 and 1997, comparing the world to sub-Saharan Africa. Very nice. That tells me what this paragraph is about. The graph described in the sequence of years, and it tells us, and I'm not going to read everything, but I'm going to jump down because what comes up, I see in conclusion. Well, in conclusion should be giving me the trend. This graph shows that for the past 100 years, malaria has been treated significantly, and there has been a decrease in the number of deaths, but there are countries where the disease continues to charge to right. So here we have, but what are we missing? What countries? It's not really countries, but we could write something different here. Here we could, there are areas in the world, but specifically sub-Saharan Africa, where the disease continues to take a large amount of human life. So what do we need to be here? We need this to be more specific. And what we have is a very good paragraph. Again here, the same problem. We want to pay attention. Yeah, you think you can cheat, but that's not really a good idea because sometimes it mixes up the punctuation. So do it this way. Use this button up here. And again, what do we see the problem? We see the problem, but of not being all the sentences together. But we look here and what do we see? We have that introduction. We see people have died of malaria since the 1900s. Very nice. What did this person do? They didn't just copy, but they made the jump. In the world minus what? So here we're missing some information. Not clear. We see that in 1900 many people died from malaria, and in fewer people. And what have we got a problem here? First of all, we need some full stops. We see in the world minus something, we see that that's not a capital letter, many people died from malaria, and fewer people died than in 1990. Now what do we need? We need a full stop there. But in all, but the data, again, what are we missing here? We're missing the exact, what are you talking about? The world, sub-Saharan, the world minus sub-Saharan. Again here, this confuses. We see a change. Again, where? We have to relate very, very clearly to these graphs. Are we talking about the world minus sub-Saharan, the world, or just sub-Saharan Africa? Because in this one, we don't see it. Let's put this together. On the other hand, compared to what? In other words, we're not sure. Sorry. Compared to what? In sub-Saharan Africa, that's good. We see that from 1919 to 1997, the people died and remains high with occasional changes but not drastic. We've got a problem. What is this? What does this relate to? Okay? I'm not sure what this relates to. So basically what we have here is that we start out with a nice idea, but we're missing information. And without that information, we can't describe. Here, there's a beginning, excuse me, to talk about the trend, but it's incomplete. So let's remember that we always need to put in all of the information. So let's take a look and see what we've got for one more. What do we see here? It's going in the right direction. It has paragraph structure. And here we have the bar chart represents the malaria mortality rate since 1900 until 19 per 100,000 population. Very nice. But 100,000 we need a comma. The chart divides to 3 areas, the world minus, the world, and sub-Saharan. As we can see from the chart, and now we have all of this information. So this is giving us all of the details. And then as we can see, not the malaria, but just malaria, mortality is not stable and continues to be a major problem. But where? Okay. In sub-Saharan Africa. And by adding this piece of information, we identify the trend and make it clearer for the reader. So again, what do we need to do? Let's take a step and look at our organization. First thing we need to do is that topic. What is the chart about? Give the information, details. This is this, and then identify the trend.